All right, hi fourth graders, welcome back. This is Mr. Steinberg. In this hopefully brief tutorial, I'd like to kind of give you some examples about how we use estimation when we multiply. When we um, when we estimate, what we're doing is we're making the multiplication a lot more simple because hopefully we're able to do it in our minds, in our heads. And it just kind of makes the process a lot faster or quick, right? But what I wanted to start with, remember when we learned how to add and subtract using estimation, what we did was we said that we round to the nearest largest place value, and then we would add or subtract. So when we estimated for adding and subtracting, we rounded to like the nearest 10 or the nearest 100 or 1,000, and then we would add or subtract the numbers. And it made it quite simple because it gave us some very simple calculations. So it's kind of the same thing with a multiplication. So here's just a couple of examples. The first one says 64 times 7. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out, is the number 64, is that going to be closer to 60 down here? Or is that going to be closer to 70 over there? Well, let's think about it. If you look at the number line, you can see here's 60, here's 65, and here's 70. And I put 65 in the middle because that number is halfway, right? It's halfway between 60 and 70. So 64 would probably be right around here. This would be 64. And since 64 is less than halfway, we would say that 64 is closer to 60. So then instead of having 64 times 7, we would have 60 times 7 because 64 is closer to 60. And now it's actually quite simple. If you know your multiplication facts, you know that 6 times 7 or 7 times 6 is going to be 42. And if you're not sure, you can always use repeated addition. You can add the number 60 7 times, or you can skip count by 6s or skip count by 60 to get where you want to go. But we know that 6 times 7 is 42, and we know that 60 has 1 0 because it's in the tens place value. So even though 6 times 7 is 42, 60 times 7, we just have to put that 0. And that's 420. And again, if you wanted to, right, you can just skip count, or you can add the number 60. Sorry about that. 7 times. Is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's 7 right there. And then you can just add them up. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. 420. And then if you wanted to, you can just skip count. 60, 120, 180, 240, oops, 300, 360, and then finally 420. And that's the 7th time. Okay, so moving over to the next one, it says 629 right here times 7, and then we have to ask ourselves, well, 629, is that going to be closer to 600 over here, or is that going to be closer to 700 over here? And again, look at the number line. 629 is less than halfway. Halfway from 600 to 700 is 650. 629 is less than halfway, so it's probably right around here. And when you look at that, you can tell that it's much closer to 600. So now, instead of having 629, we can estimate and say, well, that's closer to 600 times 7. And again, we know from our previous calculations that 7 times 6 is going to be 42. And because we're multiplying by a number in the hundreds place value, how many zeros do we have? We have 2 zeros. So 600, if you have the number 600 7 times, you're going to arrive at 4,200. So again, hopefully you see that multiplying using estimation is a lot faster than if you were trying to multiply to find the exact product. When you use estimation, the products are a lot more rounded, right? They have zeros at the end, so it's easier to do the work in our minds instead of having to multiply numbers where you don't have any zeros to work with. For the last example, this is 6,499 times 7. So we're looking at this number right here, and we have to figure out, am I closer to 6,000 or 7,000? And again, I know that 6,499 is somewhere in between, But if I look at my number that's right in the middle, or halfway from 6,000 to 7,000, I have 6,500. Well, 6,499 is going to be right there, just short of halfway. And because it's just short, I'm going to round down again. So that means this number, 6,499, is going to be closer to 6,000, just barely. And now I'm multiplying times 7. What I'm saying is I have the number 6,000 7 times. Well, thankfully, we know, right? We already know from the two previous examples that 7 times 6 is going to be 42 because we skip counted, right? We went 60, right? 60 plus 60 plus 60 all the way down to 420. And then we just kind of counted 60, 120, 180, 240, 300, 360, 420. And we use that to answer this one, and we can do the same thing here. 7 times 6, well, that's 42. And I'm in the thousands place value, so I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. So it's going to be 42,000. And again, you could skip count. You can just count by 6,000. Go 6,000, 12,000, 1,800, 2,400, 3,000, 3,600, 42,000. Sorry. Let me write that down so I don't confuse anybody. You go 6,000 and then 12,000. Sorry. 18,000, 24,000, 30,000, 36,000, and then finally 42,000. That's the seventh one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There you go. So 6,000 7 times is going to be 42,000. Okay, so that's going to be it for this one. Again, if you need help with your estimation and rounding, please reach out. But remember, you just want to help yourself, draw the number line. Okay, drawing a number line. If you're not sure how to estimate or round the number that you're trying to multiply, use a number line. Find out what number is exactly in between the two numbers you're trying to find out what it's closer to, and then you can put that number on the number line and you'll know whether to round down or you'll know whether to round up. Okay, thank you everybody. Hope you found this helpful, and please reach out to me or to your teachers if you need any help.